We welcome a special guest to help figure out voting issues and more on the state of democracy today. This morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. Once again this year, we're fortunate to have visit Madison in the middle of the election season, the national president of the League of Women Voters, Elizabeth McNamara. Ms. McNamara has a long connection with the League in a variety of roles and is currently serving her third term as their elected president. She is joined by Ingrid Roth, co-president of the League of Women Voters, Dane County. Now, before we begin, I just want to give you an update. As many of you know, last week's program featured the Democratic candidate for governor, Mary Burke. And at the time, we told you we have invited Governor Scott Walker to appear on a show before the election, and he acknowledged the invitation but had yet to accept it. This week, we were told the governor has declined our invitation to appear on For the Record. For what it's worth, we've told the governor the invitation remains open for the next 2 weeks. That said, I welcome back to For the Record Elizabeth McNamara and Ingrid Roth. And thank you both very much for joining me. I like this, that every election you manage to come back a couple of weeks before to help us think through this stuff. You're on your tour, I suppose?
Absolutely. This time during election season, the League is so busy doing work, helping voters get ready, helping get voters right at the moment really get registered, because of course registration, as we know, is the key to being able to get out and vote, but also getting good nonpartisan voter information out so that voters know who is on their ballot and feel prepared when they come to vote on election day.
And you can temper my parochialism if you want, but I've always considered the Wisconsin League, and in particularly the Dane County League, to be awfully good in terms of the work that it does, and their candidate answers for publication in particular, both in print and online, are really one of the increasingly few opportunities for people to learn about candidates.
Well, I can't say enough wonderful things about the League here in Wisconsin and all of the wonderful work that they have been doing. I know Ingrid has a lot of information for voters on the upcoming election, where to get the kind of information, but for the last number of election cycles and for nearly 94 years, the League has been there to help voters make sure that they can get what they need and that they can get out to the polls. Because I mean, this is the day, these are very important elections. This is an incredibly important election here in Wisconsin, and it's a time when American citizens, eligible voters, have an opportunity to make sure that their voices are heard.
And as long
the
as
League is there.
As long as we're talking about this, Ingrid, I mean, in a day when it's less and less frequent that candidates will actually appear together, publications like this become ever more important, and it is going to be available again, I would assume, in print.
It will be available again on October 16th, distributed with the Isthmus.
Yep.
And it will be available on our website, which is shown there, lwvdanecounty.org, prior to that. So within about the next, probably the 5th of October, or the 7th.
Last couple of years, I've taken the opportunity editorially to suggest that candidates who don't respond, you might really want to think about whether they would be candidates you'd want to vote for in office, and yet there are always candidates that don't respond.
There always are. Thank you very much.
Well, but I mean, it just seems like it doesn't. If you're not going to take the time to answer a few questions for people, what kind of a message does that send?
Well, and we do know that voters do look askance at candidates and do wonder about candidates that are unwilling to respond to questions, and particularly those that don't want to come out to debate. We've done some focus group research over the last couple of years that definitely indicate that voters wonder what the candidate might have to hide.
Yeah.
And we do, our candidates' answers get very wide distribution. So it's a candidate's opportunity to speak to many, many voters. They're distributed in libraries, they're distributed in community centers and grocery stores.
Yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, this is not about the candidates, this is not about who's asking the questions, this is about voters, and this is about communicating with voters. I mean, this is a little bit of a hiring process that voters are going through right now. This is your opportunity to really pass that job interview with voters who are going to be going to the polls and casting their ballots and deciding who's going to represent them over the next couple of years.
What I like about it is it's typically just 3 questions,
right?
But it's the same question each candidate can answer the question, and you get to compare the two answers.
Right.
It's efficient, is one way to put it. As a way of starting to talk about voter ID, Elizabeth, and I know that this is a topic across the country.
It is, unfortunately.
You know, I have been criticized for using the words voter suppression, and there are those who support this idea. They tend to be Republicans, and they tend to want to say that this is to address the issue of fraud. Help us understand the issue of fraud. Fraud's a big word. I would assume the League of Women Voters is not in favor of election fraud.
Absolutely not. I mean, protecting the integrity of our elections is one of the things that the League is all about. On the other hand, making sure that, you know, barriers, unnecessary barriers that are being erected through voter ID laws, proof of citizenship laws, and some of the other cutbacks in early voting, a number of laws that we have seen in various states across the, you know, for the last couple of years, and definitely coming into play in this election, don't protect the integrity of our elections in our view, and are completely unnecessary. They do, however, make it more difficult for eligible voters to get out and vote. And what this is all about is making sure that our elections are free, fair, and accessible to every eligible voter, and that's what we should be encouraging.
Yeah.
And if I could just leap in, I believe that voter ID is designed to address a particular kind of alleged voter fraud, and that is voter impersonation. And we don't have voter impersonation here in Wisconsin. We know of almost no issues where that has occurred. So here is a barrier that we have erected that does not have a problem to address.
And just if we look at it from where we sit today, this Friday as we're taping, the big issue right now seems to be confusion. I mean, is that right, Ingrid? I mean, here in Wisconsin, the ruling came out that the prior ruling could stand, and what we hear is that voters don't know what to do.
Right, I think that's right. And the situation is very complex. People are confused about the difference between what information you need to register and what information you need to get an ID.
Right.
We know from the Marquette poll that 20% of registered voters still don't know that they need an ID. And we're very concerned about the perhaps 200,000 or 300,000 eligible voters who still don't have an ID.
Yeah.
So, and it's a complex process to get one unless you can produce a copy of your birth certificate.
There are other states that require ID, right?
There are, yes, there are, and I think the issue isn't even so much requiring ID as the type of ID and how restrictive this list is. I think there's a general feeling among voters who support the notion of voter photo ID that this is no big deal, that, you know, everybody's got something in their wallet. The difference with these laws that we're seeing come on the books over the last few years is that it's a very, very short list. In Wisconsin, it's 7 types of ID. And if you don't have one of those types of ID, then you may as well, you know, I mean, it doesn't really make any difference if you have a whole lot of other stuff. So making sure that everybody knows what they have to have and has the right information is one of the things that the League has been very, very focused on here in Wisconsin and all across the country. And it is the reason that we have voter information, what you need to bring with you to the polls, what the laws are in your state on our nationwide website, vote411.org. And of course, you know, that applies to anybody here in Wisconsin who has a question can go to that website, put in your information, and get the current laws, what it is that we need to bring to the polls.
We just showed a picture of the 7 IDs that are required in Wisconsin. When we come back, we're going to talk more about 411. We'll talk more about voter ID right after this. My guest this morning, Ingrid Roth, who is the Vice President of the Dane County chapter of the League of Women Voters. And back again this year, Elizabeth McNamara, who is the National President of the League of Women Voters in the United States. And I'm pleased to have you both here. I was asking Elizabeth about other states that have voter ID. So are we beginning to get some statistics, some data that suggest who's not voting as a result of this and some of the issues that are caused?
This is, of course, the difficult issue, particularly for an organization like the League, because our mission is to make sure that you do have that ID and that no eligible voter is prevented from getting to the polls because of these laws. And so our leagues all across the country in states with voter photo ID have been working very, very hard to make sure that voters have the correct information and that they are able to get the identification that they need and come to the polls. That being said, we obviously have seen in courts here in Wisconsin and other courts around the state that there is some recognition that this does disparately impact certain populations. And how that is all going to play out will, still remains to be seen. But for this election, we're here, the League stands ready to make sure that voters are not disenfranchised because of these laws.
So it's probably safe to say that we don't have sufficient data yet to say this many senior citizens, this many people with disabilities, this many people of color. But I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we kind of know that intuitively.
Well, I think we know that from some of the information that is starting to come out in courtrooms around the country. At this point, however, before an election, knowing what you all have to deal with here in Wisconsin and around the country, what we want to make sure is that regardless of your age, regardless of your background, that if you are eligible to vote in Wisconsin, that you are able to do so in this election, and that is part of the mission of the League, to get you the information that you need.
Are these populations that are being targeted?
We know from the information that was presented in the case that Judge Edelman heard that, just as you suggested, seniors, young people, people of color are the ones who are disproportionately.
We were talking about that during the break. Yeah, that Judge Edelman here in Wisconsin gave a very strong ruling and specifically said, look, this is who this is aimed at. And so the League's efforts to get information to people would be directed at some of those folks as well.
And we are, at the local level, partnering with the NAACP of Dane County, the Urban League, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, Inc., the Madison Alumni Chapter, and other organizations to try, and they are very focused on trying to get their members registered and make sure they have IDs.
Yeah.
And it's very impressive here in Wisconsin too, the efforts that the universities have been going to make sure that their student IDs comply with the law. And I think they should really be commended for the work that they're doing to make sure that their students, because young people again are very, very likely to be in this category of folks that either do not have the ID or have difficulty getting the ID.
Elizabeth, I don't know the tax status of the League. Can you lobby? Do you join lawsuits?
Oh, yes, we have been involved in a number of the lawsuits around the country, including a lawsuit here in Wisconsin. And we do voter education, but we also do advocacy on behalf of voters in state legislatures and in Congress in order to protect the right to vote, and on other issues as well. But principally over the last few years, our focus has been in a lot of states on protecting that right to vote.
And now, how much are you also seeing efforts to limit the amount of time available for absentee balloting, limiting access to absentee balloting? I mean, voter ID is only one part of what seems to be a more comprehensive effort here. Is that right?
Well, certainly we are seeing cutbacks in early voting in many states around the country. That was one of the features of the bill in North Carolina that was passed just recently, and we've had a couple of court rulings we just recently had a court ruling in that case as well, and the League has been involved in that lawsuit. But yes, that is one of the things that we have been seeing is cutback in early voting, eliminating particularly Sunday voting, eliminating the opportunity to vote or to register to vote and vote on the same day. That's going on in Ohio. They had a week of overlap between before their voter registration deadline when their early voting had also started, and that has been eliminated. So yes, this is not voter photo ID is not the only thing that people need to be aware of. You need to know what your election dates are too.
And the other issues we've seen here in Wisconsin are making it harder to register voters.
Yep.
The system for verifying where you live has changed, and most people don't carry with them proof of their residence, so that when they would meet a member of the league at the farmer's market, for instance, and we could register them to vote, it's much more difficult now because they're less likely to have that information with them. So in addition to the reduction in voting hours.
This may be available on the league's online website, but does the Wisconsin League or the Dane County chapter have like a platform of things that they would like to see established in order to make voting easier? Yeah.
I would direct you especially to the State League website, but also the National League has just
yeah, absolutely. We do have a lot of really affirmative and good things that we have been pushing for too as reforms. We would very much like to see secure online voter registration made available in every state. We want to see early voting expanded. We'd like to see more uniformity across the states with respect to early voting periods. So yes, we do think that there are a lot of ways that we could be focusing on making the process more secure, making the process more accessible to voters, and we do what we can. We do whatever we can, whenever we can, to promote that.
Well, I think I've got an interesting example of that. Maybe we'll try to think of more positive stuff to finish on when we come back right after this, okay?
California does. They've got their primary system.
The national president of the League of Women Voters, Elizabeth McNamara, is back again this year. We're happy about that. And Ingrid Roth, who is the vice chair of the Dane County League of Women Voters, is with me as well. I was thinking about there's a group of young entrepreneurs in Madison called 100 State. It's a co-working space. Just fascinating group of very creative people. And about a month and a half ago, they created something called Vote Mostly Online, and it's a digital, on your phone experience that has voter information and sample ballots and that kind of stuff. What I find positive about it is that it's an age group that is typically not thought of as particularly civically involved, as a group that doesn't typically vote, and so it makes me wonder if maybe we're getting to a point where a lot of this just divisive political ideology isn't causing some people to say enough is enough, we got to claim democracy back again.
Well, I certainly know that from the point of view of my millennial children, they are very, very involved, and they're paying an awful lot of attention, and I think that's generally true of young people, and certainly it's one of the reasons why we need to be looking for ways to make voting and making registration more accessible for that age group, because I mean that's our future. So involving them and making them giving them the information that they need where they need it online, which is the principal reason why we created vote411.org, why leagues are increasingly putting those wonderful voter guides up online so that they are accessible to all of us.
And we got a list of them up there right now.
Yeah.
Including Vote 411 that we really want to draw attention to, right?
That's right. That's right. A tremendous amount of information on there in terms of what you need to bring to vote, what the election laws are in your state, links for voter registration, and in Wisconsin as well, a lot of wonderful candidate information as well so people can not only get registered, they can get informed and they can get out and vote. And that is more and more where folks are looking for their voter information. And so it's good to always see groups responding, and certainly that's where the league has been trying to respond as well, because we need those young people to have a good experience with voting and not worrying about some of the barriers that they're currently seeing.
Two of those sites were League of Women Voters sites. We should probably mention, Ingrid, that the Bring It site, I think, is that the GAB Government Accountability Board site,
yes,
but which has good information about voting. But there's a lot of good stuff on the local site too, yes, I would assume.
Yes, we have a lot of information about candidates' positions, because a lot of the material that will appear in our candidates' answers is already on our website. So, and also we have some referenda here in Dane County and some local voting.
I never asked this before, Elizabeth. Can men join the League of Women Voters?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
One of our board members is a man.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had never asked. And
Well, the League arose out of it rose directly out of the fight to get women the right to vote.
Sure.
It was created as an organization to make sure that all those millions of women in 1920 that were enfranchised did not encounter the kind of problems we're talking about today. But over the years, we have expanded opportunities, and we welcome everybody who wants to join the League of Women Voters.
And we should probably be clear, this is a nonpartisan organization.
Absolutely. We have no interest in who you vote for. The only thing we want to make sure is that on Election Day, every eligible voter has a free and fair access to the polls.
And so to both of you, I would ask, how's the local chapter doing? How's the league doing?
We're extremely busy now.
That's right.
We are healthy, and our membership is growing, including more men, because this issue is important to lots of people here in Dane County, as you can imagine.
And is it getting more diverse?
Yes, I think we will slowly, and we are making good connections now with people of color because of their very strong interest in these voting issues.
Same national?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is an issue that resonates with so many people. I think the vast majority of Americans, this is an issue that resonates. This is so central to our democracy. We're seeing more and more, lots of people coming to the League for information, lots of folks carrying our message. There are so many ways of doing that now through social media. We're active on Facebook. We're active through Twitter. We'll send you, we'll welcome anyone who wants to join us in sending messages to our elected officials that this is the way we want things to be, and we want our elections to be a time when everybody's voice is heard.
So where are you going from here?
From here, I will, in addition to Wisconsin, I will be traveling to Texas.
Texas is next?
I will be going, I'll be going to Texas, to Virginia, to Ohio. It's a busy election season.
Good. Come back for the next election, okay?
Absolutely.
All right,
I love
thanks.
Wisconsin.
Thanks, Ingrid.
Thank you.
We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. My thanks to Elizabeth McNamara. Ingrid Roth reminds me how hard city clerks and county clerks are working to help you vote as easily as possible. So our thanks to them. And our thanks to you for watching. We'll see you next Sunday on For the Record.